All right, so long story short, I noticed that my 2023 Gen 3 Outlander or XMR700 Can-Am had some weird popping and squeaks from the exhaust, and I felt like the engine was sloshing around more than in normal. And it's because both the front engine mounts were totally broken. And on the front engine mounts, there's no secondary restraining feature, so the front of the engine was just free to bounce around. So I'm glad I caught it, and I did a mod to kind of replace it temporarily. This is a pretty big issue. I suspect Can-Am's going to have to make a recall or an update on these parts. I know I'm running big tires and I drive like an idiot, so I have no room to complain, but I did some research and other people are having failures on stock tires. So just keep watching for how I fixed it. But yeah, there's definitely an issue with the engine mounts on these Gen 3 platforms. So this engine torques around a lot when you're riding it, and it often bottoms out against the aluminum on the engine mount. All right, this is what I expected to find. Second engine mount, a lot more interesting. This is the one that mounts down below the belt right there towards the front. This is my front left engine mount. It has totally failed. When I took it off, it came out in pieces. And you can see where it's failed, and it's letting the engine jump around like crazy. The rubber's tore off in there. Yeah, rubber's supposed to be bonded to that side, and this bolt bolted to the frame. So we're gonna have to get creative here in order to fix this. This engine mount failed, and that's why my engine was moving around so much. So it wasn't just that the mounts are too soft, it's that this failed a long time ago, and it was just relying on the back mount on this side. I'm curious to what I'm gonna find once I do the right side of the vehicle. But yeah, this is pretty thin aluminum. You can see where the bolt head was digging into it right there, which made it really fun to take this off because the bolt threads were screwed up because they protrude through a little bit and they were hitting the aluminum. So that's a lot of my noises I've been having. And yeah, obviously I could just order another mount. It bolts in here, but it's just gonna fail again. So I'm gonna get creative and find a way to do some drilling and stuff and actually sandwich this thing all the way through. All right, here's what I've come up so far as a fix. So I need to be able to sandwich this thing because the rubber tore free. This is what it used to be bonded to. It's not bonded anymore. So I basically made a template. So if you lay this on top of here, those holes line up. So now I can take this and put this over it after I drill this out, and it'll all sandwich together. So I realized that explanation I gave was probably shit and made no sense. My brain's barely working today for some reason. But anyway, that's how it looks together. So you got my shim piece in there, which gave me something to anchor a bolt to. I put this on top because I want the centering feature of that rubber to kind of still do something. And yeah, now this goes on here. That goes through the frame, and when you bolt it in, the engine is now restrained, mostly. And the rubber is going to be under compression. So the rubber is going to get squatted down a little bit, but I added some thickness here. So yeah, I think it's going to work fine for a couple rides. All right, I got the mount in there, but it was a fight. Just a quick note, Can-Am hardware is still Can-Am junk hardware. Be very careful not to cross-thread anything, and don't over torque stuff. I'm not even sure why this nut busted off the mount. That happened on the back mount, by the way. But it's in there now. And the reason I think it failed and the back didn't is because the back, the aluminum, the thick aluminum's captured on both sides of that bolt. The front design didn't have that feature, so once it failed, the engine was free to move around as much as it wanted on the front. So that's a pretty poor design, Can-Am. So now we're going to check out the the right side of the vehicle. All right, so here's the other engine mount. This is looking at the get the brake line out of the way for you. This is looking at the right side. Let's see if it's broken. Oh, look at that. Look at that air gap. So, stark reminder that while the Gen 3 is a lot better, it's still a piece of shit Can-Am, and they do dumb things like give you a motor out of a side-by-side that's got a ton of torque from a single cylinder, right? Really good torque at low RPMs, really big clutching, really low gearing, and then they mount it to some shit engine mounts. Repeating the same exercise on this side. This is the right side over by the water pump. You have to auger this out a little bit. It used to have a support going through the center that would interfere with the welds in the bolt head. So I drilled a few holes and then got a hammer and chisel somewhere. Yeah, chisel, hammer. And I just knocked that chunk of aluminum out, and now this is very hot. I just welded it and I just burnt my finger. Let me grab it with the pliers. Now this sits down in there flat and I can assemble it with my ghetto engine mount mod. Okay, so it's back together. Kind of ghetto, definitely one of my mods where it's temporary unless it works. You can see my little shim in there. And then I got the bolt down here somewhere. Hope you can see that. Because when the engine torques over, it might squish the mount so much that the nut is unloaded. I went ahead and double nutted it so the nut won't back off. But yeah, time to go test it out. This is the top part of the mount with the actual rubber. This is a bracket that goes from the bottom of the mount to the frame. Of course, I marked everything so I don't put it back together backwards. But here's how it works. So this bolts to your frame, and then this aluminum piece, the aluminum is vulcanized onto the mount here. You have aluminum down here, and then you have this bolt that passes through everything. So it's rubber isolated, but you still have a bolt capturing it. Okay, what I decided to do was use all the factory hardware, but I added a slightly bigger washer underneath the standoff washer thing. You can see there's still a lot of flex. It's very soft rubber, but it's keeping it under a little bit of compression, and it's going to cause me to feel more vibration, but the engine can't move around as much. All right, so we are testing two different things tonight. The first thing we're testing is my new engine mounts, and the second thing we're testing is my softer rear shocks. So I trimmed the rear shocks in order to have less preload to make it ride a little cushier with my extra down travel. Lock engaged. This is a really nasty rut. What a machine! That got stuck there yesterday.
Are you proud of yourself?
This hole is always this bad.
Yeah.
Okay, so I took it on a pretty good ride last night, and the engine mounts worked awesome. Side note, having a mini truck is like having a bike lift. This is a perfect height to do a lot of different jobs, and because all three sides fold down and it's almost the exact size of the quad, you can really walk up to it and access everything. So I'm going to start putting machines up here to work on them. Like even doing an oil change would be easier up here. I might as well do that. Anyway, yeah, the engine mounts worked good. I don't see any issues with them after my mod. The steel plate, even though it's thin because it's sandwiched between the aluminum, seems to be holding up. Yes, there's only two 10mm bolts holding your front engine mount in, but I think it's fine. The back mounts, I think, are going to be fine because, like I said earlier, they're fully captured by that big bolt. This back one, I added another washer. You can see some aluminum paste where that's kind of rubbing. So you would think that with the extra washer there, being that mount's in compression, the front mounts are in compression, there'd be a lot more vibration, but I really didn't notice anything last night. What I did notice is that the engine doesn't move around as much, and I don't have all the squeaking and popping from the exhaust joints, the exhaust springs that were getting worked. The engine moving around is bad for a lot of things. It could eventually cause your snorkel pipes to loosen up. It's changing your driveline angles, so I think this is a good mod, and I'm gonna leave it like this until something else breaks or K&M comes out with an upgraded mount. Now, I know the front drive shaft angle is pretty crazy on this. We talked about that earlier. If I wanted to, I could shim the front of the motor up a little bit to help that angle. I'm not going to do that until I need to, but if I do break that front drive shaft, you can bet your ass I'm going to shim the motor a little bit to improve the angle on the front drive shaft. The back angle is really good, so it's not going to change it very much. It'll just improve the front one because the front drive shaft is so short. But yeah, I think this is a good mod. Give it a shot. If you guys have this issue, comment below. I'm curious how many people have had these engine mounts fail. Like you saw, I just took a pry bar and pried up on the engine, and you can easily see if the mount is broken in the front. Pulling off these little fender pieces is just a couple plastic clips, and it helped a lot to see what was going on. Comment below if you've had this issue, and maybe we can get Can-Am to fix their mistake.